Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. All right, we get to talk about something fun today. I have had multiple people in the last few weeks, honestly, reach out to me and say, oh my goodness, so-and-so quit. Bethany, what do I need to do? I'll tell you one specific example, and you can tell me what you would have done.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, though, this is, you said a fun topic, so come on now.
There's a little bit of sarcasm there.
Yes, and it's actually perfect, because I've been in a crusty mood anyway, and so this is very crusty. When you said this is what we're talking about today, I'm like, good. Like, quit. Why not? Why not, employees? Go quit. Grass is greener. Yeah. So I will try to find my inner rainbow and sunshine here, but go ahead. Tell me what you got, and I'll tell you what I think about it. I was going to
say, I'm sure you will have an opinion on some of these today.
I'm sure I will.
So one particular practice reached out to me. I guess this was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Long time RDA, basically his lead RDA. She'd been with him for, 7 or 8 years. Just great employee all around. I can really say nothing bad about her at all. But she ultimately got a job offer from somewhere closer to home and was paying substantially more per hour. So it was the type of thing he couldn't compete with her hourly pay. And so he's reaching out to me going, okay, this is, by the way, so she's the lead RDA, and he had 2 essentially brand new RDAs on his team. So a team of 3 RDAs, and his lead one is now leaving, gave a 2-week notice, and then he's got 2 pretty much brand new ones on the team.
So he didn't see this coming?
No. I think his team was worried that she didn't seem happy. So we had kind of scheduled some check-ins with her to see, to try to make sure she was okay. But ultimately that didn't work to save her, or to keep her there. So I don't think he personally thought anything was wrong. I think his team was like, I don't know, she seems like she's stressed, not happy. She had a lot on her plate. Keep in mind, this is where we go back to the impact of losing employees on a team impacts your hardest working individuals. So she has been his main RDA and has always had the support of other RDAs on the team, but she was in a period of time where 2 new ones. So they had lost their 2, ones that had been with him for a while, and now she's got 2 brand new ones. That's hard to manage for any person. So if you're already kind of a little bit stressed out, life is stressing you out. I think personal finances were an issue with her. So you've got this personal stress on your plate, and now you're having to onboard 2 new RDAs. And so could that be what kind of pushed her out the door potentially? But then you start to ask the question, what do I do? I mean, okay, she's leaving. Literally, what do I do? And there's like 10 million things in your mind, not just what do I do today with this information, but how is this going to impact my practice? How do I recover from this? I feel like maybe even be a better question. So,
and where do I even start? Like, I'm just thinking about when I've gone through this the last, couple years, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to digest, but if I digest too long, then I'm either going to get bitter. Like, that's probably what's going to happen first. I'm probably going to get really mad at the situation. And then I'm going to get, sad about it and think that I have failed this person in some way, and I failed my own office, and to go through that grieving process. But then also the logistics of, okay, but now what?
Yeah. Now what? I feel like that's the main question. So then I guess where I would encourage practice owners to kind of pull back, because we start going, in our mind, it's like a domino effect. Like, oh my gosh, she's going to be gone in 2 weeks. I've got 2 new RDAs. Like, how do I solve? So we span out 2 weeks and we start trying to solve the problem. And I'm not saying that's not where we should go. We should get there. A lot of these thoughts are going to need to come pretty sequentially. But I would say first and foremost, before we start trying to solve, sometimes I feel like we jump 2 weeks ahead and we don't think about the 2 weeks that we have. We're just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a major situation in 2 weeks. I've got to solve that. And there are still some things that you need to think about, like in the 2 weeks that you've got.
So, like, for example, what do you mean?
Well, my first question to him was, are you sure you can't retain her? Which you're like, well, she turned in her notice. To me, that's not the end. It's not the end without a conversation that should take place to just make sure, is there anything that we could do to keep you? Now, somebody might say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. She turns in her notice, she's dead to me. She is gone. And that used to be, I get it. That used to be the way that we could think. We can really no longer think that way anymore. To me, they're not officially done and out of that office until they walk out the door.
So this is where, again, I'm gonna argue with you a little bit here, because, and to me, it's not like you're done, you're dead to me. It's not like that, but it's just kind of, you have clearly thought this out.
Have they, though?
I guess to me, the fact that you have interviewed at other places, like, if you've been with us that long, then chances are this wasn't a rash decision. Now, yeah, you might be, like, getting all, not grass is greener, but yeah, kind of grass is green, but like you've kind of gone, okay, this is going to solve all of my problem. I'm going to get paid more. I'm going to pay less in gas. It's closer to my house. I'm frustrated here. I'm ready for a new challenge and all of that stuff. So maybe you haven't thought through everything, but on the other hand, you haven't given me an opportunity to try. I guess what I worry about with that is then what kind of message am I sending to her and to the rest of the team that you could turn in this resignation and me come and like grovel and be like, oh, what can I do for you? And it's like, if finances were truly it, and I'm like, okay, fine, you get an $8 an hour raise. But then to me, I'm like, okay, well, now you're never going to trust me in that you had to like stomp your feet, have your temper tantrum, and then I caved. Like that's almost how I feel like it's going to put me. So to me, if it's like somebody who I can tell is unhappy, or if I get whiff of the thought that like they might be leaving, which again, I guess it sounds like in this case, he didn't get that whiff. To me, it's just, I've had employees before that have come and have said, I really want to keep working with you, but this place is offering 5 days a week. So I'm getting more hours and I'm getting blah, blah, blah. You know, I didn't want to blindside you with a resignation letter. I just wanted you to know. Which
we wish that all of them would do that, right? Like that would be the ideal. Unfortunately, I feel like most don't do it that way.
Right. No, I was lucky with that, and because it helped me see the difference between. But the ones that have written the letter, and funny enough, the one that didn't want to write me the letter, she's the one who's like, I can't believe that you would not try to retain her or ask her any questions. And I'm like, but what difference would it make? Like, I already give my heart and soul. It'd be one thing if I didn't. I already do. And if that's not enough for you, I don't know what to do. And it's not like you even attempted to have a conversation with me to let me know any of these things.
Right.
So then I start going, well, then I guess go figure it out, and hopefully it works out well for you. And I do want to keep it, friendly, because you might get over there and realize that it was grass is greener and you might want to come back. So if I leave it as a bad firing, I've burned that bridge. If you leave it as a bad firing, you've burned that bridge.
Right.
But I just think, I see what you're saying, and maybe now the game has changed a little bit and I need to like wrap my brain around that. But to me, it's like, by the time you have given me a resignation, you've already thought through and convinced yourself one way or the other that that's going to be a better situation for you. And it's going to be hard for me to not come at you with, but what about this? And what about this that I do for you? And what about that? Like, I almost feel like it's the bad breakup. Like it's,
and I would say not necessarily approaching that as what can I do to keep you, but more of a heartfelt, like, listen, I want you to know you are very important to me. You're important to this team. Is there anything that I could have done differently to retain you? Or is there anything that we could work on now to retain you? So to your point, you said something earlier where it it helps to explain why I think this is so important. Number one, there's a chance that we could retain. So, and again, I would say in the last month, I've had probably 5 or 6 clients reach out to me with this specific situation. It's pervasive right now. It's like every text or phone call I get, I'm like bracing myself. Somebody has quit and we're about to have to solve another problem. And I would say the ones that because I always encourage them, like, is this somebody that you would want to keep? And they're like, yes, I'm devastated. I don't want to lose this person. Okay, well then let's have this conversation. You need to understand, in having this conversation, it most likely will not retain them. I mean, 80% chance they're still going on and they're going to leave you. But what it does is it shows I've got a human doctor that cares and basically told me, I'm going to be very sad to lose you. I know this team's going to miss you. Are you sure we can't? They saw you fight for them, so that if they get over to grass is greener and they realize the grass is yellow over there because everybody's peeing on it and they want to come back, then they're going to have this moment of remembering, oh, they actually wanted me back. So much so, I have a different client that she had a lady that left on maternity leave, her key RDA. Initially, that lady was planning to come back after maternity leave, decided, I'm going to stay home for a bit. Well, kiddo turns 1 or just past 1, and my client hears through the grapevine that this RDA is wanting to come and pick up her license and do this and that. And she was like, huh, that's interesting. So she just shoots her a text and was like, hey, are you getting back out, in the work field? And she was like, yeah, it is time for me to go back. And she was like, well, I'm happy to take you back here. She's like, oh, I thought you'd be so mad at me because I didn't come back after maternity leave. I just didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable, like you had to give me a job. I know you've hired and you've got people on the team. And so my client was like, I was about to lose like this beloved person that I was essentially waiting to come back because she thought I was mad at her not coming back after maternity leave. A retention type conversation sends a very clear message to somebody that you would love to have back. They look back on how they quit and that you had this very heartfelt conversation like, I hate to lose you. They look back and they remember that. They remember you not being mad. They remember, sometimes we don't say anything. We're just like, okay, yeah, give me the resignation. And then we go to problem solving 2 weeks in advance and we just neglect them. I'm not even thinking about you. Well, they interpret that as they hate me. They're mad. They never want to see me again. So that if and when they do discover yellow grass, they don't come back. And so if nothing else, it may not prevent them from continuing to move on, but if it is somebody that you would entertain hiring back, and many times, surprisingly right now, I feel like we're losing our really good long-term people for a variety of reasons. And so if nothing else, we've created this space that if they get over there and hate it, they'll come back. Or I did have one that was able to retain with a conversation like that, because ultimately she did not want to leave, but she didn't feel like this doctor would be able to compensate at what she was being offered. Because remember, there are poachers everywhere out there. Our employees, if you've got employees that are staying, they are being poached and they're just denying those poaching requests. So long gone are the days of, oh, she got offered another job, she must have been looking. No, no. These people are being approached constantly from friends that are like, hey, this office is hiring, or hey, have you checked out? I saw there was an ad for blah, blah, blah. They're saying $30 an hour. You should look over there. They're hearing about all these luxurious offerings through their network of people. They're not online, putting their resume in. That is no longer... Sometimes I feel like in the past people would be like, oh, I'm so offended that they were even looking, that they put their resume out there, which I get that to a certain point. But these people aren't doing that. And so when somebody gets poached with a higher offer and that person thinks there's no way my doctor can afford this. And then you have a conversation that says, I really hate to lose you. Like, what could I do to retain you? And she's like, I don't want to put you in this position because they're offering way more. I would never want to put you in that position. And the doctor's like, I can do that. I can make that happen. You should have asked me first, right? So it was one client that I had retained an employee because they had just had that very frank conversation. And she
I guess that's what, I mean, it's good for me to hear this because to me, I still think like I'm so scared of like not holding all the cards, which I'm like, you don't hold them anyway, but the facade that I'm holding all the cards, right? Like, you know, you should want to work here. You should want to, like, if you are walking away from this opportunity, then that is a choice you're making, and I will never understand that choice, you know? So yeah, maybe it's ego, maybe it's, you know, not wanting to feel like I failed in a way. And then again, not wanting to be held, you know, not wanting to be held captive, going, oh, well, you know, now she was like, oh, well, they're going to offer me this. Oh, well, I can meet that. And then thinking, is she going to come back in 6 months and go,
I need more.
I need more. Or is she going to come back and be like, well, if you could have done more, I'm going to tell everybody else you should ask for more. Like, so maybe all those fears are silly, or maybe they're there, but it's not, it's a different game now. Yeah. And like,
it is. It really is a different ball game that we're playing. And I would say, too, we're going to probably get this more and more because we've got, like in the economic podcasts that we had a few weeks ago, we are headed into a recession where our staff is feeling this pull, this financial pull. Now, we could launch into all the conversations about how they're not managing their money well enough, how if they want more money, they should work more. We could go into all of that. And we could spend 4 episodes on that. The fact of the matter is, people are feeling the pull of the recession, and they are going to be inclined to listen to poachers more because the allure of money is there. And so we have to decide as, you know, private practice owners, are we willing to fight on that level? And maybe we can't. Maybe financially we literally can't do it, and that is okay. I would never encourage somebody to try to fight to keep an employee and put their practice at risk by throwing the overhead so out of whack. But can we fight for a particular employee? And if we can, and when I say can you should be in conversation with your financial people that are involved in your practice, your CPA, your financial advisor. You should be looking at all angles before you ever throw money out to an employee. You should be talking about it with your financial people. So, but can we fight for that person? And then it begs the question, okay, do they come back in 6 months and ask for more? Maybe they do, but did we retain that person for 6 months further? And like we've talked about in previous episodes, okay, now we know they potentially have 1 foot out the door, but now I've got 6 months to solve that problem rather than the 2-week notice that they turned into me.
So what about if you run the risk of the person telling at least even one other person on the team, well, yeah, I thought you were leaving. Yeah. Well, yeah, but then the doctor, I talked to the doctor and she's going to go ahead and give me a raise. Mm-hmm. Like I don't see how that couldn't happen. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things to take into consideration is that depending upon the employee, the example that I started this episode with, the team was devastated that this person was going to leave. Like, they love her. I mean, they've worked with her for 7 years. And I think you'd be surprised to know that team, they knew that she was leaving for financial reasons, was really the name of the game. She was having some financial struggles personally, and they knew that this person this other office outpriced her. And they desperately wanted the doctor to match whatever. They said, we don't even know what it is. We don't know what she's been offered. We know it's a lot more, but we wish he would just match it so that she could stay. So, and that depends on the employee. That's not going to happen with every employee. Some are like, oh, she's a, you know what, like, we'd rather she had been gone. So be careful who you fight for, I guess is what I would say on this. But if it's truly a valuable employee, chances are your team wants you to fight for that employee, even if that means she gets substantially more financially. if they want to keep that person on the team, they're okay with that.
And I mean, true, but they're not seeing it from the whole picture.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
And so then I'm thinking, okay, but now if they're like, oh no, Doc, you've got to fight for Mary, and then you do, then is that person going to be like, well, of course Doctor will fight for me. I've been here that long too. Or if Doctor doesn't fight for me, like, are you making something that's that much worse? And I guess, that you're probably going to have some of all of the above in each situation.
Well, and here's the other risk. You don't fight, let's assume, and then you have, which this occurred, and I told the doctor about this, that one of the employees, one of his other long-term employees said to me, what am I missing by not looking at other places? That's like, talk about a cancer that spreads. Like, if you've got one that was outbid somewhere else and they're leaving, and doctor didn't, in their perception, doctor didn't fight for her, and then they start thinking, oh gosh, if there is greener grass out there and I'm not looking, or I'm just avoiding all of these attempts to pull me away, like, am I being the dummy?
But you don't think she's going to think that even if he retained the first one?
But not based out of her mouth.
Okay. Because that's where I would think, where if everybody's like, wait, she got offered what? And again, this goes back to feeling and not logic. And as we know, I'm a very feely, but part of me goes, yeah, if everybody on the team is like, we love her, how could she leave us? Like, whatever. Or what, like, we're going to lose her. But part of me would be like, but you're choosing to leave.
Yeah.
And so you're the one being selfish. You're leaving all of us in a bind. So why should that be on the doctor to solve that?
I know.
So I don't know. The whole thing just, anyway. So I guess the point is, though, it may be, I guess the takeaway would be, it may be worth. And so don't just assume that you got the letter and that's the end of that. Don't just assume that we're going to retain everybody.
Yeah.
You've got to look at it case by case and kind of weigh out, is it worth trying to fight for and keep this employee? And these are the things I might face. But at the same time, if I don't fight for the employee, then this is what I may face.
Exactly.
And then, so like, have a deeper conversation with yourself to kind of go, and maybe reach out, like you said, to other people on the team to see, which, again, I do that because I know I'm a feely and I'm probably putting up my defenses. What do you mean you're going to leave? Fine.
Yeah.
F off. Like, go look at that grass. I hope it is greener. It's greener because it's full of weeds. That's why it's greener, right? Like, that's just my knee-jerk, like, feely reaction is the defensiveness, and, like, my feelings are hurt. So, yeah, asking others on the team, like, okay, am I just being sensitive Sally right now? And
yeah.
I need y'all to talk some logic into me here. I mean, that's happened with us, with our, she was going on maternity leave, so we knew that she, had a finite date. But she had her ups and downs in between that, like, what do you do exactly? What are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, what am I paying you to do? Because, we're still having all of these issues that I'm tasking you with figuring out. And you're sitting over there doing God knows what. And get out of here. Get out of here. You're irritating everybody. So, yeah, we don't need you to stay till your maternity date that you gave us. Just go ahead and go now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I almost did that, 2 or 3 times? Two or three, at a minimum, 2 or 3 times. I'm like, I don't know what she's doing. She's irritating some of my, stronger people. Yeah. The stronger people are like, why is she staying?
Yeah.
Why is she not doing it? Why is she still here? And I'm like, why is she still here? And then I came to you with that. I was like, dude, I don't want to afford the overhead on her. I could take that and put it into somebody who is working more. Who's not rubbing her belly every 30 seconds like she's the first one on the planet to be pregnant. Like, bye. And, but I was only hearing the perspective of like 1 or 2 squeaky wheels that didn't even work directly with her. Like, she was a front person. The squeaky wheels were the back people. Yeah. Who were hating on the front anyway. And so it was like collectively the front's not doing what they need to be doing. So-and-so's not doing this, so-and-so's not doing that, and we don't know what the hell she's doing. And so, I would get caught up in that. I'm like, that's true. Like, I can't figure out what she's doing, and honestly, that task takes one person, and I've got three up there. And if three people can't solve a task of one person, maybe all three of you need to go. But okay, if not all three, at least the one needs to go.
That's on our way out anyway.
That's on our way out anyway. Like, bye. You're irritating everybody.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you pointed out it's not everybody she's irritating. It's like two of us she's irritating. But the others, what you suggested?
Yeah, so I actually suggested that, I said because you were wanting to go ahead, she had like a month left before her maternity leave date that she had given you.
But that was like the third time around.
Well, yeah. That's true. Now that you mention it, this did come up multiple times.
It did. I'm like, bye. Can we let her go now? Can we let her go now? Are we done?
And so my encouragement to you, which this will go to another thing that we need to think about on this, is do we let them finish out their notice? And with her, she'd given us a long runway. Like, this is when, I'm pregnant. This is when I would like to be out, to start my maternity leave. And so we knew that, and we knew she wasn't coming back as well. So I think that's part of the equation here, is that you knew she wasn't coming back. And so my encouragement to you when you were in the fields and you were like, let's just let her go home now. And I said to you, you really need to check with your front desk team, because I think my perception is that they are relying on her for a lot of things. And when you did check with them, they were like, no, we still need her. She does this, she does that. And you checked with them a couple times there, because there was a couple different times where you're like, I think I'm ready for her to be gone. And they were like, please don't do that. And so, and you let her finish it out. She stayed until her final date, even though she was driving you crazy. She was driving your main other key leader crazy, because she was integral to the front and they were depending upon her. Plus, we had brought on a new front office person. This lady that was pregnant was helping with some of the training and just getting things kind of buttoned up before she left. That front desk team did not want her leaving. And I would say that is such a good way to approach when somebody does give notice. The first question, maybe the second question I get is, do I even need to keep them on board? Should I go ahead and let them go? And so there's a lot that comes into the equation there. With your particular situation, she's pregnant, she's not coming back, she's not going to another office that recruited her, and it was very low risk to keep her on the team. And your team, the front desk team, wanted her there, which I think are two important things to consider. So number one, does my team want her here, or have they just been waiting for the day that she quits? If they hate this person or can't stand her, or this person causes a lot of drama and she turns in her notice, you do not have to let her work those 2 additional weeks. It is very common that a practice owner will say, thank you so much for this notice. I would still keep it very pleasant, very positive. We hate to see you go, but I completely understand the situation. Let's go ahead and plan on today being your last day. Go ahead and get your things together, blah, blah, blah. The employee that's quitting is expecting that. So you're not going to cause this tornado because you said that she needs to go. Now, the risk that you run with keeping a bad apple on the team is that ultimately, I'll give you an example of this. One office, she got recruited by somebody else. She spent those 2 weeks talking about how great her new office is. She spent her 2 weeks talking about the amount she's getting paid over there. She spent her 2 weeks trying to recruit for that office. That is a danger that is never okay to keep on your team. If you know that that person has that propensity to do that, or even if it's just a thought, you're like, ooh, would she do that? To me, protect your practice. Get that person off your team. Now, I do want to say, just because you released her from the practice the day that she gave her notice, doesn't mean that she's not going to actively recruit your people. And again, I've had several offices where they continue to recruit afterwards because they've got everybody's cell phone number. They keep talking about how great it is over there. And I've had multiple clients that have lost additional people after somebody has left because they recruited them over there. So don't think that you're 100% guaranteed not to lose people, which means you need to treat how you let that person go on the day that they turn in their notice very carefully. This is not get out of my office, I'm done with you. This is you treat that person, even if they are a cancer in your practice, you treat them with the utmost respect and professionalism, because all that person needs is lighter fluid on their match to inflame that whole team against you. So you treat that very carefully. If you're not fulfilling the 2-week notice, I would still say get with your team and check with them. Go, you know what? Hey, thank you so much for this notice. I'm going to start talking with the other team about roles and responsibilities. I'll get back with you. You get with them and say, hey, so-and-so gave her notice. What's your feeling? My thought was that it might be best to let her go ahead and start her new position, but what do you think? Include them in that, because I want them to see that you're treating this thoughtfully, respectfully, and professionally. If they think you made a knee-jerk reaction and you're like, get on out of here, I don't need you for the 2 weeks, and now your team's drowning because they don't have a person, now they're bitter at you, and then that person is over at her new office talking about how wonderful it is, and you have a chance to lose more people. So you got to be really careful if you're not letting them finish out their 2 weeks to handle that really well.
And to your point, like when you're asking them, a lot of times they already knew this person was leaving. Mm-hmm. So they have already and mentally have started going, what are we going to do without you? Who's going to fill this role?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they may already be, excuse me, they may already think like, well, I've already got a toe out the door because this person's has already been telling me all of this. So it's very dicey, sticky, icky. Mm-hmm. But I think that's where, like you said, they wanted this one to stay. And sometimes I'll, if it's a person that I'm like, would I rehire you in the future or not? Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. A lot of times it's how they leave that helps me decide that. And I'll even ask them, like I've had some where I'm like, you seem like you probably need to get going now. Mm-hmm. Like at least, at the very least, if that's the excuse they gave me, like, I'm struggling with childcare or whatever, I hate to lose you. You tell me for these next 2 weeks, if you stay, if you were counting on that paycheck, that I'm going to keep you here, I'm going to make you do blah, 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 blah. This is all the things that I need to see from you. But if you're kind of going, I really need to, be with my kid the next 2 weeks until my mother-in-law moves in, so that, what do you need? Mm-hmm. Even though in the back of my mind, I might be going, get the, out you get. But I think that is a smarter play.
It really is, to really let the employee weigh in on that, let the team weigh in on that. If the team's like, oh, we really could use her these next 2 weeks, look at how busy the next 2 weeks are, then I would say if you're worried that there's a risk to having her on the team, there are ways that you can minimize that risk. So she might be, okay, yes, I see how busy the schedule is. I need you to run my main column so that Sally, the one that's going to be here, after you're gone, she can put together a training manual. She can get ready she can help me start interviewing RDAs. She can do this, she can do that. Well, what you're doing is you're keeping that potential threat tied up in back-to-back patient care so that she doesn't have a lot of downtime to be chatting with the ladies at the front or chatting in the break room. You could have her, you're like, hey, we don't have an RDA onboarding program. Can I actually have you spend some of these, days in these last 2 weeks? Can I actually have you working remotely? And I need to have a really good RDA onboarding document. Can you put everything together and this and that? So then she's technically working for you. Your team is happy because she's creating something that's going to be helpful for them, but she's removed out of the office. And you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to, pay her for that. Well, first of all, is it truly going to be helpful for the person that's having to train the next RDA? Well, then it's time and money well spent. You come out looking like a rose because you let this person finish out her 2 weeks. You position it in the right way with your team to say, I wanted her working on something that would help you guys with whoever's coming on board. So be creative. Don't just be like, it's either she's gone today because she turned in her notice, or I'm letting her finish out her 2 weeks just as we normally would. Try to maximize that 2 weeks and figure out, how do I protect my practice in those 2 weeks? And then how do I also utilize or squeeze the most out of this person for the next couple of weeks. Any other thoughts that you have on this subject?
Not that I have. I've got no thoughts on this. I'm like just I'm the monkey that's blindsided every time. But that would be my question. Like you said, your clients are asking and they jump 2 weeks in advance, and you're like, wait a minute. What about in that interim time? Now, let's just, because we've been going with the assumption that we might be able to retain. Assuming we can't retain, then what are you telling your clients to do? Like, what are the next steps, or what are we doing?
After we've kind of figured out, okay, we've had a conversation, can we retain or not? Then the next thing. So first step is, can I retain them? Yes or no? Second step is, do I let them finish out their 2 weeks? Yes or no? And that should be in concert with your team that you're deciding that. Then the third step, so after we've thought through those 2 steps, the third step is, what am I doing? Am I replacing this person? So is it a position that I have to have? Or can I divide out her tasks? So was she a borderline useless employee? Okay, can I just restructure what they were doing to consume that role? Or I'm going to have to temporarily do that, because you're not finding somebody in 2 weeks. So temporarily, what's my plan while I'm trying to find somebody? How are we essentially going to make it? Does that mean I'm staffing with temps and I have to get temps in here? Okay, well then you're on the phone that day. The day you figure out that lady, we can't retain that person on the team, you're calling out to your temp agency and trying to get those dates booked. Everybody poo-poos the temp agency, and I have to admit I'm still angry with them as well. But the fact of the matter is, that's why they exist, is for times like this when you're like, we cannot make it without this employee. I'm not going to be able to find somebody in 2 weeks. What's my alternative? A temp is your alternative. And yes, it's going to cost you your arm, your leg, and your nose, but it is worth it if you are able to keep your practice at the same level that you were with your employee that quit. So a temp is always an option, or dividing out temporarily her roles and responsibilities and among other staff members. And then again, that's in concert with them. You don't come out of that quitting conversation and go, all right, Sally, so-and-so's gone, so you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do this, and you're going to have to do this. And then Sally's now angry and we're at risk of losing her. No, dialogue with your team. All right, we're going to be down a man for these next few weeks. What can we do? And oftentimes they'll come up with creative solutions. They'll rise to the challenge. So yeah, those would be the 3 steps. Retain is the first, figure out the 2 weeks, and then what are you doing? What's your plan for either replacing or dispersing that person's responsibilities? I told you it was a fun subject matter, but it is incredibly relevant. I can guarantee you most of the people listening have had this situation or are in the midst of the situation. Like I said, I've had 5 or 6 in the last month.
So it makes me go, has my head been in the sand? Do I have one that's about to jump ship and I have no clue?
Well, hopefully not. But if so, we'll
Well, how would I know? How would I know that?
I mean, again, that's where those employee touch-ins, just keeping tabs on how your employees are doing, how they're feeling. We've got to, long gone are the days of I can just be a disconnected doctor and my staff is kind of running on their own. It does require the doctor being more involved. I'm not saying you're having counseling sessions with your employees, but just, hey, how you doing? We just came off of a whole series of individually meeting with people, figuring out their goals. Your whole team, we sat with each one of them, and I feel like great things came out of those conversations. But it was really, they had face-to-face time with you and me and your associate, and we left the floor open. Anything else you want to talk about? So after we got through our questions, is there anything else you want to talk about? Now, that may not prevent anybody from quitting, but at least we know, looking back, we've done everything in our power to be available to them.
So is this where and why I'm selling, so that I don't have to show my face more and have these conversations, right? That's where the magical DSO is going to take over and make all that go away.
Oh yeah, just disappears. They don't even have to talk to the employees. They just stay magically. No touch bases. It's just a miraculous thing that happens overnight. So yeah, dream on that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.